Welcome, everybody, to a very special Magical Egypt Live. I love synchronicities and I love how life is crazy sometimes. And I have this little magical trick that YouTube always wakes me up right at the right point of a video that I need to hear. And this morning it was Jordan Peterson's interview with a Great Dane, I'll call him, and his name is Tor Noratrander, I believe. And he's a consciousness researcher, and he was talking about the fact that consciousness is kind of a bit of a restricting valve, right? We have like 11 billion bits of information come into our mind at any time, but only about 16 bits of those turn into our conscious awareness. And what we actually do with that conscious awareness is that we take that little bit of information and turn it into a story for ourselves. And so that story is the mechanism by which we live our life, which is actually perfect to know because the person that's with me today is the fabulous Bernhard Reicher, who is the creator of MagicShule in Austria. I'm just going to pronounce it in the English way. So welcome, my dear. Welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor because this is the first time that I can tell about my magical system in the English language. So for all people out there, please bear with me if I don't pronounce everything correctly. If I'm searching for words, it's not my mother tongue, but I'm very happy to be here.
I'm not concerned with that at all. And I can't wait to hear your story about stories. So, effectively, what we're going to be doing over the next two sessions is we will eventually get to the point where we're going to journey into the imaginal. But a key piece of this is actually about storytelling, right? So, tell me, darling, a little bit about how everything in the world is stories.
um, I may begin with the story of how I encountered stories and their
Yes,
importance. And
let's
that
do
was
it.
growing up surrounded by stories. In our family, it was very usual to tell stories of all kinds. So my grandmother watched over me when my parents were working, my grandfather was working, and my small brother was there, but he was too small. So what we did was she she read fairy tales to me from an old Brothers Grimm book that belonged to my mother. She still has it, and every day was one fairy tale that she read to me, and then we recounted it in our own words, and then we enacted it. We played the fairy tale every day until the book was over, and then she invented new fairy tales for me. So my grandfather, he told me his stories growing up when he was a little rascal playing tricks on the priest, and later on stories from the war. And my my father was 3 years in Canada. So and then he had a world journey. He used the Siberian tram, not tramway, train, and so these were adventure stories I grew up with, foreign countries. And my mother used to be a school teacher. She introduced me to classical literature very early on. I read the Greek myths when I was 9 years old, and so I totally grew up with stories, and my thinking is in stories. Whenever we talk about something, my brain just comes up with a story metaphor. Um, and as we talked in our first interview, I have synesthesia, so um, these stories they have the best synesthesias for me. I love them. I I perceive the world in stories, in the form of stories. I perceive the world as a big story and myself as a story. So um, that was only years after my childhood when I found the words for it. Growing up, that was just normal.
Well, yes, indeed, darling. Look, because of Magical Egypt, I was kind of forced to look into the Imaginal Realm. And I had a conversation with Gary Lockman, which was
Oh,
fabulous. And he
yeah.
talked about, the hypnagogic state being the
Yes.
gateway into it. But just for people that don't have an idea of what the
Mm,
Imaginal Realm is, can you explain it for
yeah.
us, please?
Yeah. So imagine there are planes of existence or worlds. There is our physical one, and then there is a pure conceptual one, pure spirit. And then there's a world between these two. That's the imaginal realm. It's a bit like smoke. It's not of one world, not of the other, but between. We can perceive it, but we can't grasp it. But it doesn't mean it's not there. So the imaginal realm is this kind of in between state, and it's a real world. It's not physical, but it's very, very real. It's the world of prophetic visions, of creative inspiration. It's the world of um, shamanic encounters. It's the world of spirits, of um, revelations. It's where prophets and mystics and shamans and magicians go. It's there are several ways you can enter the imaginal. For example, the hypnagogic state, but also, of course, out of body experiences, near death experiences, magical rituals, some magical rituals. Um, Sometimes, when creative inspiration hits you very hard, um, you can enter it by the way of entheogens, or active imagination. That's what we will focus upon. I just wanted to uh, convey that there are several other methods as well, um, and and shamanic trance work, breath work, and so on. So, um, and it's called the imaginal because of the imago. That's one the final stage of the development of insects. You have the larval state, the pupal state, and then the imago. That's the perfect image, so to say, of the insect, of what it is meant to
Okay.
become.
Like the
So
archetypal aspect.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
and for the larva, um, it must seem grotesque if you show the larva, you will have wings, and that's just no, that's absurd. So the imaginal can come across to us as really it's numinous, it's fascinating, but it's also frightening at the same time. And so Frederick Myers came up with he coined the term imaginal. He was one of the founding members of the Society for Psychical Research. He also coined the term telepathy, and but it's not new. In several other cultures, we have knowledge of the imaginal realm. As far as I know, the Sufis call it alam al-mithal. Um, a French philosopher, Henri Corbin, he died in the 70s. He called it mundus imaginalis.
Yes.
J.R.R. Tolkien called it Faerie. And Carl Jung, of course, entered it in his active imagination. So across many, many cultures and approaches, there is this notion of this world. And imaginal is, of course, not imaginary. As I said, what you encounter there is very, very real. albeit not physically.
I think that's hard for people to get their arms around in our kind of very materialistic paradigm, that there could be a realm that is completely real.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm so interested in about it is its persistence, that it exists whether you're there or not.
Yeah.
But yes, the idea that it's real, but it's not tangible, that it is in fact imaginal. Somebody's asking in the chat, and I had the same idea because when you mentioned the fact that you can get through there through hallucinogens, does this mean that when we bump into those little crazy DMT elves, that that's where they live? I mean, do you have any sense of that story, how that
Yeah.
works?
Yeah, we will come to stories in a bit, but I tried to find a consistent theory or to map the imaginal, and I very soon decided, no, I won't do. I won't fall into the trap that the Golden Dawn. We have to explain everything. So functionally, it's one realm. Because what you encounter in the imaginal, you perceive with a sensory organ that is the imagination. If it is the same as the astral realm, or whatever you might call it, whatever it has been called in several paradigms, I, I I don't know, but functionally, uh, whenever you are astral traveling, whenever you meet the DMT elves or the gods, other spirits, the ancestors, and so on, you perceive them with your imagination. So that's the common denominator. And so functionally, it's this one realm. And that's enough for me. um,
Sometimes it is telling. Look, I mean, when I was interviewing people for the magic show, the magic documentary, I one of the obviously the questions that I asked was, how does it work? And they're like, we don't need to know. We just know that it works,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But I just want to step back for a second, because the idea that the imagination is an organ of perception is a really huge idea. And I don't want that to kind of
mm,
go without saying, because we kind of tend to think of our eyes, our ears, our nose, as our organs of perception. But I love this idea that the imagination itself is an organ of perception.
yes,
So I don't know. That just really blows my mind.
yeah, yeah, and we uh, we can use like other sensory inputs in it within imaginal experiences. We can see, hear, taste, smell something, but it is an other way of seeing, tasting, smelling, hearing. It's the imaginal way, and opposed to our bodily senses, the imagination does not only perceive, it always interacts, it always shapes what it perceives. So um, as soon as we get in contact with imaginal elements, we are shaping them and they are shaping us. That's um, and that's a very very important thing. Um, we we tend to interpret the things we encounter there as literal, and that's the pitfall. When we are there, it's literal, um, but back here in the physical realm, we have to interpret them as metaphors.
Okay. That
So
might get tricky.
yes, yeah. So so uh, gods are metaphors for us, and we are metaphors for them. The translation program are metaphors.
So, in a way, what you're saying is that we interact with these beings and they're metaphorical in nature. So, what you're saying is it's really about the stories that we tell about these beings. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, for instance, if let's say we met um, a, a fairy,
Mm.
right? And my story is that, let's say, fairies are cheeky and nasty and evil and want to play tricks on you. But your story about fairies is that they're lovely and friendly and want to help you. Does that affect then how I translate? Like, would your translation of that fairy be different in your imaginal realm and your how you bring it into reality?
Yeah, to some extent, but
Okay.
um, you can differentiate a real, authentic encounter in the imaginal from what you would like it to be, that it doesn't behave like you want it to be. So,
Yes.
of course, we always have our filter that we can't turn the filter off, um, but they they will present itself to us whether our filter is in that way or in that way. So my students often say when we do exercises there, but how can I know that's not just a figment of my imagination? How do I know that's not imaginary? And there are several criteria for that. So one is you're surprised, you didn't expect it to be this way. Another one is it doesn't change that much. Of course, as I said, our imagination does have an effect on it, but um, not like, oh, I want it to be nice and friendly. No, that doesn't work. Especially, yeah, especially with fairies.
Fairies, fairies can be very tricky, I'll tell
Oh
you.
yes, oh yes, oh yes. And the third criterion is bodily sensation. So sensations that you can't produce willingly, like goosebumps or an itching or something like that. And that's also a way of knowing that you have been touched by the imaginal in your everyday life. If maybe you listen to a song and a tear goes down your face because it touched something very deeply inside of you, or you get goosebumps, or synchronicities. That's the same thing that wells up in the physical and the imaginal at the same time. But it can take a different appearance in the imaginal than here, but it is at the same time. And so these are the small things that we perceive, how we interact with it. Um, and then there are the big things. In psychological terms, you could say the inhabitants of the imaginal are archetypes. Um, that's one way of saying they are stories. Uh,
Yes.
because yeah, you can call them gods. You can try to unify it and call them, yeah, this is the archetype of the warrior, the storm, the king, and so on. But in effect, they are stories, and I perceive them as living, intelligent entities. Stories are spirits, and they, like every living entity, they reproduce and they use us for it. they, they nest in us and they grow because
And they change.
and
They
they
evolve.
change, yeah, and as we metabolize chemical substances, they metabolize attention. You did a video on attention, so that's uh, um, how they metabolize energy. So um, and as you said at the beginning, um, our life is the expression of the stories we focus on. Our whole culture, our values, our justice system, our religious viewpoints, everything derives from stories. Our culture, everything is an expression of certain stories and our own lives. So what we focus on.
I'm going to give you a story about this story, for example, that is a
Yeah,
really good demonstration.
yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of the rain. But when it's raining, I can tell myself the story. Oh, I'm miserable. I can't go out and do my gardening now because it's raining.
Mm,
Or I can tell myself the story. It's wonderful. I'm going to go and dance in the rain, right? So my reality is very much affected by the story that I tell myself about the rain, right? So
yeah,
that's on a very mundane level, but I find that to be really one of the most powerful techniques that I use in real life to uh, deal with the little dramas that come
mm,
up.
yeah.
And I'm really trying because I've had a lot of dramas, right, lately, just with the internet and all kinds of things in the business. And so the story that I tell myself is that this is happening for a reason and it will be over soon enough. And it's really stopped me from aging and pulling my hair out and going crazy because it has been really, really stressful. So even on the mundane level, the story that you tell yourself can
Mm.
affect you. So I'm kind of thinking it's even going to be more powerful, this ability to tell yourself a story on this realm. Well, this is my next question. Is the imaginal realm a causative realm, in the respect that what is occurring on this realm, does it impact what is happening in this material realm as well?
Absolutely, absolutely,
Okay.
and vice versa. So, um, of course, we shape stories by telling them. We can alter them, um, but we are also expressions of stories. That's a closed loop. You surely know this picture of MC Escher, the hands drawing each other. So
Yes,
one hand
yes.
draws the other hand, and you don't know what's the chicken and the egg, and that's with the imaginal realm. So as I said, we are expressions of stories, and of course we can we cannot not tell stories. It's impossible. um, we are homo narrans, as I said. We are storytelling species.
Machines.
Yeah,
Look, and as I said, this is why this was so synchronistic, is that this Tor, can't even remember his name now, Tor on Jordan Peterson was saying that that is the mechanism by which we experience reality.
yes,
And it makes sense. Like, as I understand the eye anyway, is that the eye doesn't necessarily see in and of itself. The eye takes in the information and then creates the image inside your brain.
exactly.
And so it makes sense that it's along the same mechanism if the imagination is an organ of perception, right?
Yes.
So those two things align. And there's another concept that I've been playing with a lot lately because um, it's in the next episode of the Magic Show, but it's the idea of egregore. And
Mm,
egregore also is a feedback loop, right?
yes.
Where your thoughts and emotions affect it, and then it affects you as well. So
Yes.
there seems to be a lot of and I think it comes down to resonance, right? There's a resonance that we fall into with these things. Or am I completely wrong,
No, no, no,
Phil?
no, no, no. That's absolutely my experience. We can't escape stories. Our only ability is to choose which one to tell.
Yes.
And
And therein, I think, lies the crux, right?
yeah,
Going back to my rain, my reality is all based on, or how happy my reality is all based on the story that I choose. And they have this thing, I think, in the Native American uh, mythos about which wolf do you choose to
yeah,
feed,
yeah,
right? So
yes.
it's that same
Yeah,
kind of thing.
that's on the very mundane level, as you said. That's what in NLP you might call reframing, and but that is also what we do on a magical level, on a collective level, on a species level. Um, we we can choose, do we want to tell a dystopian story to ourselves, and or a utopian story. It's and that's what I experienced. So one of my paths I chose for a living was to be a storyteller. So I went on stage and told stories, just without any props or something, like just telling stories like when I grew up. And I loved it. I also was an actor, but that's a different kind of art. And I love the storytelling, this engagement with the audience, and to see what was happening in them. Today, I watched a video of Alan Moore explaining that writing is a shamanic and magical act, and storytelling, of course. He says it's how you modify consciousness.
Wow.
That's what. If that isn't magic, I don't know what is.
If you're sitting around a fire, campfire, there's nothing better than a good story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, it can take you to fear, it can take you to compassion, it can take you to excitement, right? And these people that, like yourself, that have the ability to tell a good story, it really does clearly impact your consciousness immediately.
Yeah, yeah. And not only conscious, but following consciousness, the body. So our body, our whole life is the manifestation of stories. Every scar I have on my body is the manifestation of a certain story.
Explain that, elaborate on that. How does a story end up in a scar, for goodness sakes?
Um, when I was 13, 14, I was very much into fantasy, sword and sorcery. I loved the Conan comics, and so I had this. This is part of the story of the swashbuckling hero, or this that he.
You do look like a swashbuckling hero, darling, with that moustache and the yes, I can see you with a sword doing some like D'Artagnan kind of situation.
That's what Christopher Vogler said to me as well.
It's true.
Yeah, and interestingly, I have this mustache only for 3 years now, but
Oh,
there's an old picture of me as a child where I had it painted on, and of course I played one of the musketeers, and uh, so but yeah, in these stories of the hero who confronts monsters and so on, of course he has scars because he is courageous. He won't back away. So by embodying this story, not totally, of course, I never went to a gym or something like that, but I was very obsessed for a few months with these stories. um, I decided I like scars. They are a sign of bravery and not shying away from danger and so on. And before you know it, I um, toppled when I tried to cross a fence. That's a liminal place, no less. And this was a barbed wire, and I sliced my my legs. So I've got two very big scars, uh, and of course I thought, yes, now I've got my scars.
you know, I love that. It's really like there's levels of octaves of this information, right? And so you can get it at one level and then grok it at a different level and a different level. And one another lovely person that's worked with Magical Egypt is a woman by the name of Joanna Kujara, and she did a course recently for us about invoking arrows.
Hmm.
And I didn't have any idea on what we were doing or what it was going to be, but it really did sound good. And part of that workshop was embodying goddess. right? And so she kind of went through all the different goddesses, and you could choose one. And it was very enlightening for me, because I really didn't know a lot about goddesses, but I went through the process. I chose this Sundari, that is also one that she likes, and through basically invocation, really, and mantra, it was amazing, right? It
Mhm.
was amazing how you can um, really completely change your physical presence, okay, by doing these practices. So I get how you got that scar, because you were embodying, this Three Musketeer type person, right? And the one of the telltale aspects of that archetype did in fact manifest upon
Yes.
you. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. I hadn't
Mhm.
thought about that. Look, as far as I had kind of thought about these physical reactions in the material realm, as we were talking about offline, I've been looking into Taoist, primarily really sexual practices.
Mhm.
And but in that search, I came across the idea of that they also have, an imaginary castle as part of their, uh, let's call it their story,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And you use this castle for healing. So, or just one of the things is healing, but
Mhm.
you can use it for healing or magical purposes, or and getting the gaining of information. But if you can actually heal as a result of interactions
Mhm.
on this level, then it must have very physical ramifications. So that's really interesting, darling.
Yeah,
Really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, stories are the building blocks of reality. And if you know how to engage with them, you can change your reality. What you said, embodying god forms and other magical techniques. That's just that's inviting stories, and that's a big thing. And you have to be very careful because um, I don't know how it's in English, but in German, according Jung said that mystics swim in the same sea that psychotics drown in. So um, it, as I said, it's numinous. If you really encounter stories, you can be totally engulfed by them and gobbled up, and then maybe you think you're the second coming, or whatever. The Jerusalem syndrome, that's a, a particular form of story. So that's why we contain rituals in with vanishings. That's why, as Jeff Kripal said, the holy is not good. It has to be contained so that we can somehow engage with it. That's why we build temples and churches and mosques and so on. So uh, it's a place where we can relatively safely encounter these energies, beings, qualities, whatever you might call them. And so there are magical techniques as old as humankind. And one magical technique is the magic castle. Um,
Yes.
and
I was just going to say, tell me about the castle.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
I laughed when I read your description of the Taoist version of it. I, I didn't know about it. I love Taoism, but I didn't know this specific one, and it sounds very close to what was given to me. And that's what I was telling you in our first interview. But I think it's okay if I reiterate it a bit.
Oh yes,
How I
please,
came
darling, please.
upon it.
And
Yeah.
look, I'm just going to interject.
Mhm.
I had, as we spoke on our first interview, I had a castle, but it had one room, right? And so when I looked up the Taoist version of it, I was shocked too, because it's like you have like a floor plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And mine doesn't have a floor plan. And so they have a floor plan. So I'm like, wow, this again is crazy. So yes, please reiterate, darling,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Okay. Um, it's really my what would you call it? My original what I bring to the table of magic that really comes from me. Um, it's called the Magic Castle, and in short, it's an interface to the imaginal realm, and you enter your castle via active imagination. So that's a bit different from guided meditation because you're very autonomous. You can act in and of yourself there, and yeah, you perceive and shape things, and you have this very keen awareness that this is real. In the second part, we will go there. I will guide people through their magic castle, and I do this since nearly a quarter century now. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I counted it in the
You
year.
don't even look that old, darling.
I'm 48, so
Wow, wow, that's amazing. You preserved yourself very well, darling. You must have also a youthful archetype that you're working with. But before we go to the castle, I want you to explain to us active imagination,
yeah.
why that's different, okay? Because a lot of people may have heard that term, but they may not actually understand what active imagination is. So explain to us active
Yeah,
imagination.
that's a term coined by Carl Jung, as far as I know, and it's a way of using your sensory organ, the imagination, and not perceive something imaginary. That you can daydream, you can have guided meditations, and of course there are overlaps. But active imagination is a way of engaging the imaginal, of really entering it.
Okay.
You use a certain state of consciousness that is a liminal state. Um, the hypnagogic state before going to sleep is perfect, but also in other states of consciousness that we can enter through magical techniques. Um, and and then you actively use your imagination to interact with the surroundings, the beings there, and as I as I said, it's not only perceiving. You can um, you have an influence there, and you can consciously decide how to change it. And
Okay.
because of this function of the imaginal, that what you change there will have um, an expression in your physical life. Um, but you have to know the metaphor. That's the thing, and that was given to me in form of the Magic Castle. It's a metaphor. It's a real place and a metaphor. So it's this interface.
Yeah, yeah.
And as I said, since about 20 years now, I guide people through the Magic Castle, and every time I hear, "Yeah, I saw that before you said it. It was there." And I couldn't change it. I didn't like it. I tried to, no, that has to look different, nicer, or no, that's kitschy. I want it to look dark or something like. It can't be changed. It's a real place. That's the feel, not the feeling. That's a nearly a visceral impression you get using active imagination.
So it
Um,
has orange plush carpet then, shag pile.
yeah.
You said it's
For
peachy.
example, and you, uh, and in my case, with my synesthesia, I feel the carpet, and I really, so I can really, um, with my all my senses interact with it, and I've trained myself now for nearly a quarter century, so I can enter my castle and its surroundings with open eyes. And that's the thing, you can use it for doing magic, because the rooms in the castle, they are metaphors for parts of your life. And if you in the first journey there, what we will do in the second session, you encounter it. You get to know your castle, and that's a form of diagnosis, if you will it so, to know. Okay, I know that's the metaphor, the symbol for this part in my life. Okay, and that's what my first impression was. I used it after I got it, like a party game. Like, okay, I will guide you through a castle, and then I could tell you what this means. And the people, they were flabbergasted. How do you know this? And I said, yeah, of course, it's obvious. It's the metaphor. And it took some while, but then I found out, if you change something there, if you change the room, if it can be changed, or you get help, you can, as I said, you can interact there with spirits. You can change how it looks. Then it plays out in your physical reality. Sometimes instantaneously. Sometimes it takes a few hours, days, maybe weeks. But that's a way to rewrite your own story. And there's also room there for creating hypersigils. That's another way of engaging with stories, as Grant Morrison famously coined it. And also for doing time magic. But I will explain all this in the second session. But
What's interesting is somebody said that time is very different in the imaginal
yes,
realm as well,
yeah,
right? So that's an interesting aspect.
yeah.
But you've made 2 points that are I'd love for you to explain. So let's say we go into the kitchen, and the kitchen has a specific room. Actually, I'm going to step back. Is there a castle, but I see it differently, or is there my castle
It's
and
your
then
castle.
your castle?
Yeah, it's totally yours. Everybody has his own very personal castle, and that's your sanctuary. Um, so you can invite other people there, but you should be very aware of where somebody else is going. It's private. My students also asked, can I invite spirits there or gods? I said, oh, you can, but I wouldn't do it if you don't want to invite possession. So, uh,
Okay, okay, yes, wow,
yeah. But
okay.
there are places where you can meet gods, because as a so everybody has his or her own personal magic castle and its surroundings, and the farther out you go, the more you enter the collective unconscious. And yeah, yeah. And there are places and regions where you can encounter spirits, gods, and so on. But uh, that's not the basic training anymore.
And that's not what we're doing next session.
No.
Okay. So everybody has their own personal castle, and each castle has, let's say, its own kitchen.
Mm.
Like everybody should have a kitchen. Okay. So then I go into my kitchen in my castle, and there's rats there. Okay. And I'm like, oh, my second question is, because it's all metaphoric and these are stories, and you seem, because you've been doing it for 25 years, to know what rats mean in my
Mm.
kitchen. But how do I then interpret what rats really mean in my kitchen?
Mm.
So, how do we get from I see it, it's a metaphor, what does it mean to me? How
Yeah,
do we do that part?
yeah. In After the first guided tour, we will talk about it, and that's my experience, my intuition, and to uh, that you get to that you unlock this intuition within yourself. And another way of getting to know what a symbol means is just ask it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's an enchanted castle, and like everything in fairy tales, everything can speak. You can speak to a room, to the rats, to the castle in itself. Um, you can get in dialogue with it. And of course, it's a magic castle, so somewhere in its vicinity, there's a sorcerer. uh, and he is, or she, sorceress, is very benevolent and wants to guide you, wants to help you. So if you're at a loss for yourself, just summon him or her, or go to them and ask. So I don't know. There are rats in my kitchen. What does it mean? What can I do about it? And
How crazy simple. I love it though. I love that. I mean, I love it. When you say it, it makes perfect sense. And somebody in the chat said, it's very hard to believe this until you've done it, right?
yes,
And I would like to say yes, but I've never done this, so I'm really excited. I mean, I'm so excited to go and do it. But I've had other examples, right, with some inner child work, as we mentioned last time,
mm,
where you do ask and you do get an answer. And so, even if you've never done this, if you've done anything like inner child work, you may have a sense of it. But I got goose pimples when you said you can ask the room and you can ask the rats and you can ask your sorcerer, because it's something that I relate to. I've had that experience, right?
yeah.
And it's so simple and so crazy and
Yeah,
so real and
yeah,
so
yeah.
awesome. It's
Most people
amazing.
think it's complicated, and I don't know how to do it. In fact, it's very, very easy. It's um, something in us knows instinctively how to do it. As soon it just has to be experienced once and explained in terms that we can wrap our heads around it, and then it's like, oh, okay, okay, so now I can explore for myself. And it's not important that you are very good at imagining things. You don't have to experience this like on the holodeck in 3D and every color and so on. Um, so I've got a friend and colleague, and he has aphantasia, so he can't imagine anything. That's a very rare condition, like synesthesia, uh, and he if he closes his eyes, it's just black, and it's not. It it's very seldom, but yeah, even he can enter his magic castle, um, uh, and it can be um, like a quick drawing or something like that. Like you don't have to see every detail in perfect shape or form. So it's very easy, and of course, you can do it as as often as you like, and then it gets easier. You'll get more details, um, and that's the thing. I mean, you can do it wherever you are, whenever. Um, I I do magic with this waiting for the bus at the bus station. It's as soon as you have the floor plan, as soon as you know what the rooms mean, and I mean, I wouldn't do it for the first few weeks. I would recommend to be in a quiet surrounding, but uh, as soon as you have the lay of the land, you're able to work magic, and so many kinds of magic, because there are so many rooms in the castle. It's like a Swiss Army knife of magic. There is the room where you can. I don't want to spoil anything, not because our brain lists, oh, okay, it must be this way, and then it gets harder. So I want the people to be surprised for the first time, but there are so many things, like and I've friends and colleagues who are psychotherapists or magicians and so on, and they'll say, yeah, I can adapt it to my work, to my style of praxis of magic, and it gets so much easier. So it's
Cut to this time next week. Chance will be like, "Hello, I'm talking to you," and I'll be like, "I'm in my magic castle. Excuse me."
you can,
Hello.
yeah, you can even communicate between your magic castles. That is something we found out in my magic school with my students. They loved the magic castle, and they said, of course. So if this is real, um, we can send us messages. We could send a raven or something like that. And they said, okay, so
That is amazing, darling.
what
That's
is your coat of armor for your castle? And then I'll address a message and I'll send whatever to your inbox. and 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 the next time we got together on Zoom, uh, they said, "Yeah, I got an alert when a message came, and the message we said very basic things like geometrical shapes, colors, or and the symbol from whom it is sent, and they wrote it down and said, okay, so the message I get was, for example, a green triangle." And it made an sound, and it had this symbol. So I thought it must have been sent by you, and that's exactly what I sent to you. And that's so if somehow all of it crumbles and we don't have the internet anymore and we can't communicate from home, we
we're
can
using
use
Magic
the
Castle
magic castles.
Communication. MCCS. I love it. Wow, that's crazy, darling. All right, I have to ask you a question though, because what's the potential of running into something really scary?
Usually not inside your magic castle. I've never encountered it. There have been some unpleasant encounters, but not really scary. Um, and um, not inside the castle and the immediate surroundings. Of course, is if you venture out into the collective unconscious, there are places, and we did for one evening. We had homework, so for the next evening we will encounter a certain kind of spirits, or let's find out what's in the underground, what's beneath, or something like that. And one home yeah. Uh, I if you want to hear it, what I encountered, the strata, the very deep strata, uh, were old myths, were the founding myths of our cultures. They were like, this is the real basis of the imaginal. Um,
That's amazing. Like when you even said that when you were growing up, um, your grandmother, I think you said, told you the Grimm's fairy tales.
mm,
Those are very different, right, than the ones that I got, right? Because your fairy tales, the Grimm fairy, they honestly do have a different flavor to them. They have, more of an edge to them, let's
mm,
say. But that's really interesting that you found the archetypal.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
The um, the the terminus is mythologem. So
Okay.
they are like building blocks of myths, um, and these were like the what the imaginal is made of.
So
But
you're like the story keeper, darling, the
uh,
keeper of the stories.
a keeper, and I am a magician of stories, because, as I said, I I was so fascinated by what happens with us when we listen to stories, when we embody them, as I did also as an actor and as a storyteller. I experienced it firsthand, and I saw it in my audience. It changes us telling stories, and I said, "What is that? What is it that? Why does our consciousness? Why does our do our bodies react to stories in a certain way?" And the other thing I grew up with is magic. So I grew up in a cunning tradition, you could say, and so it was like predestined that I put these two things together, stories and magic. And so I came up with my own magical system called mythomagic. How you engage with stories, with the narratives in your life. And yeah, that's, and it took me some decades to figure this out and to put it to use. And as I said, there are several methods, but the magic castle is my very own personal thing that I bring to the table. It's a sort of magic um, of the open hand, or I don't know the expression. So you don't have to use paraphernalia. You don't. Uh, of
All
course, you
you need
can.
is this.
Yeah, yeah. All you need is your imagination, and you don't have to wait for the planetary hour to be right, or something like that. And that is perfectly valid, of course. Everything, and I love the ritual magic as well. But this is a kind of magic that is at your hands whenever you are, wherever you are. It's you can do it, and I recommend it by using hypnagogic states. So before going to bed, you can go. There are some rooms I wouldn't recommend, but, and as you said, there are scary regions. That was one part of or one homework evening, to encounter really dangerous places, and that was so fascinating.
On
Uh,
purpose. You went to scary places on purpose.
on purpose, yes, because we're magicians.
I'm going to magic myself some armor and sword and machine gun before I go. Okay.
And I didn't get this card this time. But every and we that that's so interesting. So by encountering the dangerous places, we of course encountered also how we can avoid them, or how we can maybe use them to do some nefarious magic if it course.
You're
So
too lovely for that, darling.
I didn't use it, but I know how.
Look, I'm so, I've always had a suspicion, right? I've always had a suspicion that magic is easier than we're led to believe, right?
Yes.
I've always had a suspicion.
Yeah.
And I kind of have this really weird feeling like if I just knew the right body move to turn, I could swap, like move into a different reality. Like it's just a matter of just something that's this natural and organic to our experience,
Yes.
so simple that you wouldn't even think about it, right? So now we have reality is story, and we have a magic cast. It's so simple that I'm so excited because I really think that it makes perfect sense to me. It makes perfect sense. As I said, I have a mundane example
Hmm.
that makes sense. And so just taking this up an octave is very exciting. Like we're moving it into the causative realm, but we're using the same mechanism that is clearly powerful down here, right?
Yeah.
So let's take it up to the causative realm. And I literally have goosebumps, literally, right? And it's
Then
freaking 100
you've
degrees
been touched by
outside.
the imaginals.
Wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's crazy. It's crazy. So
That's
I'm
the bodily sensation, the reaction of your body to, um, as you, I think what you just did is that I thought it must be easy if I move the right way, and then you talked yourself into it, and that's it. That's, you told yourself the story of entering the imaginal, and your body reacted to it, and that was just the teaser.
oh my God. Well, I'm so excited. Is there anything else that you need to tell? Oh, so darling, what do we need to do? What do we need to bring? Do we like don't have 3 margaritas before we do it? Or do we like maybe fast, or do we need to do anything? Do we need to bring
No,
anything? Do we
not
need to lay down? Do we need to sit up?
really.
Do we need to have candles? Like, tell us
Yeah,
practical so that how do we,
yeah,
yes, next week,
yeah,
what do we do?
yeah, yeah. Great. In 10 days, isn't it?
Sorry, darling. Yes, 10
Yeah.
days, 10 days.
Um, so the most important thing is that you're curious and trust your impressions, even if they don't make sense. That's the most important thing. Of course, turn off your mobile phones. Um, you you can lie down, but I recommend sitting up because it will take about 40 minutes. And if you tend to go to sleep via these exercises, then it's better to sit up. Um, you can put on candles, and you can have you, whatever is for your senses, or you can do banishings and offerings and so on, but it's not important. In fact, I it helps if you're used to these kind of things, if you have conditioned yourself to certain banishings, and then you're in ritual space, by all means do it, um, but it's not
It's not
necessary. It's
necessary.
a big and something in us likes this very much, and then it says, oh, now I'm in public, or I'm walking in the woods and I don't have my incense burner with me, or and I can't go in the magic castle. Uh, that happens very quickly. So I don't recommend doing these things. Um, if you're very used to it, then of course bring it on. Um, but that's the beauty of it. It's not necessary. You can just enter it. And I also don't do much of a trance induction. Like, okay, now I'm counting from 1 to 10, and if it's not necessary. Yeah, you're just there. And, so um,
I'm never coming home, darling. I'm going to stay in my castle. Send you green triangles and yellow squares. That's that's amazing. Okay, so we don't need to do anything. We're just going to show up. We're going to sit down. We're going to listen to you. You're going to take us on a journey,
yeah,
and then you're going to help us. I'm assuming interpret what did my
of course.
rats mean if I don't get a good answer by asking them themselves. You'll help us translate.
Of course, of course.
Okay.
Afterwards, maybe have a notebook ready because the impressions can fade quickly, but
Yes.
you get them back, even if you somehow drift off and can't remember some rooms. You just go back and say, "Oh, what have I missed? Oh, I just can't go back there, so no problem." Um, but that's it. After we've finished the first encounter with the Magic Castle, I will paint broad strokes as to what everything means, and then we'll go into detail in every room, um, and how you can use it magically, of course. Um, and I very much look forward to the conversations we are having, because I love this participants. They say, "No, what does it mean? I mean, I had there was this thing lying there. I don't know, and I don't know either. But something tells me in this moment. I think it could mean that." And they go like, no, that's you couldn't have known that, or okay, that makes perfect sense, and so on. So it will be quite fun as well, and quite revealing. Of course, we don't have the time to go through every room of every participant. So, but uh, most things will be self-explanatory for all, because we have this feeling of what symbols mean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like reading tarot cards. Even if you don't have the symbolism, if you have a question about a love affair and you have a heart pierced by through three swords, I mean, it's obvious. So other other symbols are not so obvious, and that's where I come in. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Well, I'm looking forward to finding rats in my kitchen and bats in my belfry at least. And we'll take it from there.
yeah,
So what I'm going to do when
um,
sorry, go.
that and what I will do is the basic tour of the castle and its immediate surroundings, and then I will give some tips how to use it, and other rooms, because we don't have the time or the attention span normally to go into every room, um, but what you can do with it, and specifically one room where you can really wield time magic. That's yeah, that's what I where I come back to how I encountered the magic castle. Um, we drifted off because that was um, in the year 2000 when I was riding a train. I was reading, and so I was in a liminal place, and it was like a lightning bolt hit me. I put away the book, got out my notebook, and jotted everything down. And there it was, the Magic Castle. It was like download a zip file, bam, that's it. And yeah, yeah. So I thought for decades, and then 19 or 20 years later, something like that, I have encountered this form of magic several times that I gifted
This is where
myself.
you won all that money on Who Wants
Yes,
to Be a
yes,
Millionaire.
yeah.
Okay, you told us about that. So that's the time magic
That's the
where
time
you
magic.
get a message that makes you go on a
Yeah,
show
yeah.
and you
Where,
won
where I
all.
can where I can encounter my former self, and I can send it messages. Or in this kind, or in this special thing, I was in a ritual, and then I was lying down, and then it opened up in front of me, my former self on the train reading a book, and I knew this is the moment, and everything I had experienced with the Magic Castle so far I put into a zip file, and boom, there you have it. It was like blasting all of uh, the knowledge and experience of 2 decades through a portal to my former self, and I could witness myself from um, behind uh, what I did, like put my book away and got out my notebook, and then the portal closed, and that was it. So I, I when I was like, I think 7 or 8 years old, maybe 8 or 9, I walked home from school. I had this idea, this notion: what if future me would come up this road, like maybe when I'm 17? That was very old at the time.
Yeah.
And
All grown up.
of course, what would my 17-year-old self tell me about my future? Would it be allowed to tell me everything? Possibly not. And so that was how I entertained myself with this kind of thoughts walking home from school. And later on, when I was 17, I remembered, and I thought, oh yeah, if I would go back now, what would I tell my former self? And so that was how this thing developed. And at several very, very crucial points in my life, um, I got this like a message or the zip file or a really just do it this way, no question. And several years later, or maybe even, I think the Magic Castle was the longest one that took nearly 20 years later. I was in the right magical space that I could uh, blast it through time to my former self. And every time that was, as I said, crucial. It changed my life totally for the better. So there is a room in the Magic Castle where you can do that, and I will tell you how to use it.
I'm going to send myself a message to meet you 20 years earlier so I can learn about the castle 20 years ago. Oh, that's amazing. I love this, darling. All right. Well, look, I just want to say, first of all, before I finish, is there anything else that you want to tell us about this journey?
No, nothing comes to mind right now. I think, yeah, I just can encourage everyone. It's, as I said, it's easy. The philosophy behind it may be a bit unusual, but it's very easy to do. I have taught it to several hundred, I think more than 1,000 people over the years in my seminars, and there was not one person who couldn't do it. So it's very easy. You can immediately adopt it to your own style, to your own practice, and it's revelatory. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I very much look forward to it because I'm of course very proud of it, and it will be the first time that I can teach it for the English speaking world. So
Well,
it's an
we're
honor
so
for me.
Yeah, and look, we're so appreciative. And just so you know, people, Bernhard is being so incredibly generous with us. He is taking us on this journey for 50% off the price he would normally do it. So it's really a huge gift to us. And in addition to that, because we know that times are really hard, Bernhard is gifting 3 scholarships, right? Which is just so incredibly generous and kind. So if you would like to come and you can't afford it, then send an email to Venice at magicalegypt.com, magical Egypt, one word. And also, I'm going to put a link in here. And because I'm not good at this, there's probably no link there now. So you're going to have to come back. Or in about 2 minutes after we finish, the link is going to be there to the page. And Bernard's Magic School, I don't know how useful that will be because it's in German,
It's only in German. I intend to translate everything. That was the idea from the beginning, but that will be so much work
no, now
because
there's AI,
that's
darling. Now you
not for
go.
now, or in a few years. But
But yes, but anyway, at least they can contact you. And always you can send me an email because we're in contact. And Bernard's on Facebook as well, so you can track him down there.
yeah,
So come back, get the link, send me an email if you want to join us. It's in 10 days from now. It's the same time, and it's going to be absolutely mind-blowingly fantastic. I cannot wait, and I'm so grateful, darling. Thank you so much. Yay.
thank you so much for enabling this. Um, it,
It's totally selfish. Just so you totally 100% selfish. I want to do this so bad, like really literally so bad. So yeah, so I'm just so happy we're doing it.
Mm.
Yay.
I think it's as a particular story that wants to branch out, and we are just um, two humans that help this story along.
Symbiosis, indeed, my
Yes.
dear. I find that really interesting that there are stories that want to be told, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
look, I mean, for goodness sakes, we need something now to change now because now is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
And so if we can all get inside and do some magic and make the world the way that we want it to be, the way that you've seen it in
Yes.
your future,
Yeah.
darling.
That was
uh,
also imaginal. That were real uh, possible futures that I saw with these imaginal techniques, and it depends on everyone. I know it's a cliche, but it really it's everyone, and I think it the Magic Castle is one way to empower yourself to really shape your life um, to tell reality a new story, a better
Yeah,
story, because that's how you change stories. You tell them a different story.
yeah, it
You
makes sense.
Yes, and that's our power. We can choose what stories we tell, and if we use these imaginal techniques, they will change accordingly, and so our physical reality. So, um, and the Magic Castle is a tool that's it's just there. You can use it everywhere and everywhere. So
I'm excited, darling. And just for the people that might be skeptical about this, and if you haven't watched Magical Egypt season 4 episode 1, we make the point that magic has been with humanity as long as there has been humanity, except for just the last few hundred years, right? So
and
you might be
only in the
sitting
Western society. So
yeah, exactly. Western society. I'm sitting in Thailand and there's a magic tree across the road, for goodness sakes, right? It's the Western society that seems to kind of come into a little bit of a weird relationship with it. So if all of humanity's done it for all of humanity, then maybe there's something to this. So I think this is a great way, honestly, darling, a great first step into magic, right? Like as a beginner entry level magical operation, I can't think of anything more inviting and easy to do.
yes, yeah. And honestly, at every level, I have students that have been practicing magic for 30 years or something like that. And they also said that that's that changes everything. The Magic Castle is like, why did I not come upon it sooner? It doesn't contradict anything I did so far, but I can combine it with everything, and it makes everything so much easier.
I told you, I know it's that little, just that little tweak and you're in. Oh, darling. Well, I'm excited. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining all of this to us today. I'm waiting with bated breath. I can't wait. As I said, I'm probably just going to move into my castle. I'll come back. So this might be the last time you see me, people, because it sounds really good. Thank you so much, darling. And we will see you soon. Everybody, if you want to learn, come back. I'm going to put the links here now so that you can find everything. And we hope to see you very, very soon.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you for having me, and see you soon in the Imaginal.
See you soon, darling. All right. Bye, everybody. And see you soon.